Just a quick tour then through what happens in Iran next, because there is an evolution that gets you to the Safavids. Because otherwise, how did those two manuscripts, which depict such similar things, look so different? So what you're missing in your list of 250 is the step in between, which is probably the crystallization or the period of great refinement of Persian painting. So you're missing the Timurid dynasty, the dynasty founded by the next ruler after the Mongols, Timur or Tamerlane, who we all know from world history, coming in from Central Asia, different background, kind of a Turkic based background. So he spoke a different language than Persian or Arabic. Also nomadic, and it was very much like cowboys. You as a young prince or noble had to go out and, convince people to join your army, and you'd ride out on a horse and you'd try to convince somebody that you could protect them if they pay homage to you, and he kind of built up an empire in the wake of the Mongols. And early Timurid painting really shows us in a very kind of refined way, a very close connection to Chinese painting, whether it's copying the subject matter, the decorative quality, the way that Chinese figure painting sets figures against a flat kind of ground, that interest in kind of flattened space. It's delightful, though, because this lovely lady is reading like a Persian book, not a Chinese. And this is the first period we can document the creation of albums during the Timurid period. So this is late Timurid, and these albums, and they don't come, this isn't the cover, I just wanted to show you a beautiful Persian book cover, oftentimes made with painted lacquer or sometimes gold and paper inlaid, cut in and inlaid into leather, just the way the silver was inlaid into the bronze of that basin. But we have these few surviving albums that ended up in the Royal Ottoman collection. And these are early, and they show us that they were collecting Timurid drawings. Some of these may have been intended to capture patterns. And those patterns could then be applied to textiles or drawings or manuscript cover. Some have figures, some have things like dragons. Some look very Chinese. But local artists were making sketches, making full paintings, but also little study sketches or templates, and they're being collected. And so maybe it's being collected to be the pattern book. Maybe they're also being collected because these rulers are becoming aesthetes. They're becoming literati themselves, developing an appreciation. And it is under the Timurids we know these great art collections are starting among the nobility. So here's another one, a drawing, Timurid drawing from my museum. And look at the ink work, how it gets calligraphic. And Chinese rocks, Chinese kind of wet outline, gnarly trees, Chinese clouds. The other great innovation then that takes place is the transformation of these elements into something new. So maybe you could compare this to Gothic in some ways. You have these Chinese-inspired figures, but they're now wearing Persian court dress. They're set in a beautiful outdoor garden setting, flat landscape, so lots of fields of flat color, and then decorative, linear vegetation applied to it, a high horizon, incredibly ornate calligraphy and decoration around these paintings. And then, so this is kind of this first burst of a real, true Timurid style that builds upon those Chinese influences. And then you get to this by the late 15th century. Behzad, I was trying to think of what to compare this man to because he is the first great master artist of the Persian tradition. And if we could have had 251 objects, Behzad would be in this. Up to me. Because here he takes all that interest they've worked in, the fine detail, the refinement, the pattern, the way of tipping up and flattening space and opening it, and combining it with a greater attention to the figures. So the figures start to look, some of them three-dimensional or a little modeled. They might be a little bit expressive, but they're not bold like Bahram Gur. They have a bit of weight. I mean, maybe Giotto is the comparison for Behzad. Because after this, the next dynasty is the Safavids, who take over after the fall of the Timurids. And they will ebb and wane during their period. So they inherited this great Persian culture, but they were politically weak, but culturally rich. And so you'll see them extend into what is Afghanistan and wane. And here's where they really fight it out a lot, in Turkey and the Near East. 3 capitals, so they'll start in Tabriz, and that's where this early great painting tradition that's already been established by the Mongols really comes to a head. With Shah Tahmasp's Shahnameh. So Tahmasp is the second ruler, second king or Shah of the Safavid dynasty. It's founded by his father in 1501, Shah Ismail. And we'll talk a bit more about his importance in the dynasty later. But he began to rule at a very young age and ruled with a regent, or kind of as a regent, in his teen years, and then launches in to this great project to create another great imperial Shahnameh. They are clearly looking back to the Mongol Shahnameh, which has survived. It's the only other large-scale work of its kind. And like the Mongol Shahnameh, these folios are like this. I think they were, know they were bound in 2 books, leather bound, which were enormous. So this was not a short undertaking. It took the whole scriptorium, the whole workshop, imperial workshop, was focused on this project. It went through multiple heads. It was such a long project. The first one is our guy, Sultan Muhammad. But it continues for years, and so 2 other artists will help head and manage the project. And the people who've studied this manuscript intensely say you can flip through it and you can pick out the parts. You can identify artists. Some are signed, but mostly through connoisseurship, or at least they believe you can. You can tell if it's early or mid or late by the style, the composition of the different paintings. There were 759 pages in the manuscripts, and to 759, 258 paintings. And we know this because this survived into the 20th century. It was intact until the 1970s.